The city buzzed with energy as Emily Carter stepped off the subway and onto the crowded sidewalk. It was early morning, and the streets were alive with the sounds of honking cars, hurried footsteps, and distant chatter. People rushed around her, some clutching coffee cups, others talking animatedly on their phones. Emily adjusted the strap of her bag on her shoulder and took a deep breath. Today was important, more important than most days. For weeks, she had prepared for this moment, rehearsing answers to potential questions and fine-tuning her resume until it looked just right. Now, standing only a few blocks away from Quantum Tech Industries, she felt a mix of excitement and dread bubbling inside her. Quantum Tech wasn't just any company. It was one of the leading tech firms in the country, known for its cutting-edge innovations in artificial intelligence and robotics. To Emily, it represented opportunity, a chance to break free from the limitations of her current life and step into something bigger. Growing up, she hadn't exactly lived a privileged existence. Her father, John Carter, worked long hours as a janitor at various office buildings, including Quantum Tech itself. Money had always been tight, but John never let that dampen his spirit or discourage his daughter. Instead, he encouraged Emily to dream big and work hard, often reminding her that education would open doors no one could close. Emily had listened. She excelled in school, earning scholarships that allowed her to attend a local university where she studied engineering. Despite juggling part-time jobs and coursework, she graduated near the top of her class. Armed with her degree and unwavering determination, she decided to apply for an entry-level position at Quantum Tech's Research and Development Department. It wasn't just about getting a job. It was about proving to herself and everyone else that she belonged in places like this, even if they didn't look like her. As she approached the towering skyscraper that housed Quantum Tech's headquarters, Emily couldn't help but feel intimidated. The building loomed above her, its glass facade gleaming under the morning sun. Through the windows, she could see employees moving about, their silhouettes sharp against the light. Everything about the place screamed success, something Emily desperately wanted to achieve. Taking another deep breath, she pushed open the heavy glass door and stepped inside. The lobby was every bit as impressive as she imagined it would be. Polished marble floors stretched out beneath her feet, and sleek leather couches lined the waiting area. A massive reception desk stood at the center, manned by a young woman whose smile seemed practiced but warm. Around her, men and women in sharp suits walked briskly, exchanging greetings and glancing at their watches. Emily felt out of place almost immediately. Her navy blue blazer and plain black slacks weren't designer brands, and her worn leather bag showed signs of age. Still, she held her head high, clutching her folder tightly as she made her way to the receptionist. "Hi," Emily said, trying to sound confident despite the nerves gnawing at her stomach. "I'm here for an interview with Mr. Dawson." The receptionist nodded without looking up from her computer screen. "Name? Emily Carter." After typing something into her system, the receptionist gestured toward the seating area. "Have a seat. He'll be with you shortly." Emily thanked her and moved to one of the couches, perching on the edge as she waited. She watched the people around her, some scrolling through tablets, others chatting quietly, and tried not to fidget. Minutes ticked by slowly, each one stretching longer than the last. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, a man emerged from the elevators. He wore an expensive suit and carried himself with an air of authority. His nameplate read Richard Dawson, hiring manager. "Emily Carter?" he called out, scanning the room briefly before settling his gaze on her. "Yes, that's me," Emily replied, standing quickly and smoothing her blazer. She extended her hand, which he shook briefly before motioning for her to follow him. They walked in silence to a small conference room on the ground floor. Once inside, Richard gestured for her to sit across from him at the table. Without preamble, he opened her folder and began flipping through its contents. Emily watched anxiously as his expression shifted from neutral to disinterested. Her heart sank when he closed the folder after barely glancing at her resume. "Well, Miss Carter," he began, leaning back in his chair. "I appreciate your interest in Quantum Tech, but I'm afraid we're looking for candidates with more relevant experience." Emily blinked, caught off guard. Relevant experience? She repeated, her voice steadier than she expected. I graduated with honors in engineering and I've completed several internships. I understand, Richard interrupted, his tone polite but firm. However, our positions require individuals who can hit the ground running. Someone with connections in the industry, perhaps someone who has already worked with teams like ours. Emily felt heat rise to her cheeks. Connections? Teams like theirs? None of those things had been listed as requirements in the job posting. She clenched her fists under the table, forcing herself to remain calm. If I may ask, did you review my references? Or the projects I included in my portfolio? Richard waved a dismissive hand. We receive hundreds of applications, Miss Carter. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go over every detail, but thank you for coming in today. With that, he stood, signaling the end of the conversation. Stunned, Emily rose to her feet. She wanted to argue, to explain how hard she'd worked to get here, but she knew it wouldn't change anything. Nodding stiffly, she gathered her belongings and left the room. As she exited the building, anger and embarrassment churned within her. How could they dismiss her so easily? Did they even give her a fair chance? Just as she reached the sidewalk, she heard voices behind her. Two employees, deep in conversation, walked past without noticing her presence. Did you hear about the AI issue? One of them asked. They still can't figure out why the system keeps freezing during critical operations. It's a nightmare, the other replied. Michael Grant is losing sleep over it. If we don't fix it soon, we might lose the client entirely. Emily froze, her mind racing. An AI problem? That sounded like something she could tackle. After all, she'd spent countless hours studying similar systems during her studies. Maybe there was still a way to prove herself, to show them they were wrong about her. With renewed determination, Emily squared her shoulders and started walking. Again, rejection hurt, but giving up wasn't an option, not for her. Emily didn't say a word on the way home. She stared out the subway window, replaying the events of the day in her mind. The rejection stung more than she cared to admit. It wasn't just about not getting the job. It was the way Richard Dawson had dismissed her so casually without even giving her a chance to prove herself. As much as she tried to push it aside, the memory kept creeping back, fueling both her frustration and determination. When she finally walked through the door of their small apartment, her father, John Carter, looked up from the couch where he was watching the evening news. His face softened when he saw her. How'd it go? He asked, turning off the TV. Emily hesitated for a moment before answering. Not great, she admitted, dropping her bag onto the floor. She slumped into a chair across from him, letting out a heavy sigh. They didn't even give me a real chance. The guy barely glanced at my resume before telling me I wasn't qualified. John frowned, his weathered hands gripping the edge of the couch. That doesn't sound right. You've worked too hard for them to brush you off like that. I know, Emily said, her voice tinged with bitterness. But what can I do? They don't care about people like us. All they see is someone who doesn't fit their idea of what an employee should look like. John leaned forward, his tone gentle but firm. Don't let them make you feel small, Emily. You're smarter than most of those folks probably realize. If this company doesn't want you, it's their loss. Emily appreciated her father's words, but they didn't erase the sting of rejection. Still, she nodded, forcing a small smile. Thanks, Dad. I'll be okay. Later that night, after dinner and cleaning up, Emily found herself unable to sleep. Her mind kept circling back to the two employees she'd overheard outside Quantum Tech. Their conversation about the malfunctioning AI system intrigued her. She couldn't shake the feeling that solving such a problem would be exactly the kind of challenge she thrived on. Maybe there was another way to prove herself, if not directly, then indirectly. On a whim, she decided to dig around for more information. Knowing her father worked nights at Quantum Tech, she asked if he'd noticed anything unusual lately. John shrugged, mentioning how stressed some of the engineers seemed. I hear bits and pieces while I'm cleaning, he explained. They've been working non-stop trying to fix whatever's wrong with their AI system. Some big client is breathing down their necks or something. The next morning, Emily woke up early and began researching everything she could about Quantum Tech's recent projects. Most of the details were vague, but she pieced together enough to understand the basics. The company relied heavily on an advanced AI system to manage complex operations, and now that system was failing intermittently, causing delays and errors. Engineers had been scrambling for weeks to identify the root cause, but nothing seemed to work. Inspired, Emily decided to take matters into her own hands. That evening, while helping her father clean up after dinner, she stumbled upon an unexpected treasure, a discarded textbook tucked away in one of the boxes he brought home from work. Its cover was worn, and several pages were dog-eared, but the content inside was gold. Titled Advanced Artificial Intelligence Systems, the book contained detailed notes scribbled in the margins by previous readers. Many of these notes appeared to be complaints about rigid programming structures and inefficient algorithms. Emily's eyes widened as she flipped through the pages. This was exactly the kind of insight she needed. Over the next few days, she immersed herself in the material, studying late into the night. Slowly, a theory began to form in her mind. What if the issue wasn't purely technical? What if the AI's failures stemmed from its inability to adapt to human unpredictability? Machines excelled at following rules, but humans rarely operated within strict parameters. Perhaps the AI's algorithms were too rigid, leaving no room for creative problem-solving. Determined to test her hypothesis, Emily drafted a proposal outlining her ideas. She wrote clearly and concisely, explaining how the AI could benefit from a hybrid model that incorporated elements of human behavior into its decision-making processes. To strengthen her argument, she included examples of similar systems she'd studied during college and suggested practical steps for implementation. Once the document was complete, Emily hesitated. Sending it unsolicited to a major corporation felt risky, especially after her earlier rejection. But something inside her refused to give up. She attached a personal letter to the proposal, addressing Michael Grant, the CEO of Quantum Tech. In it, she introduced herself briefly, apologized for reaching out unexpectedly, and explained her passion for solving complex problems. She ended with a simple request. Please consider my perspective. I believe I can help. With trembling fingers, she hit send. For a moment, she wondered if anyone would even read it, but deep down she hoped, for her sake and for everyone else counting on Quantum Tech's success. Over the next week, Emily returned to her routine, dividing her time between job applications and late-night study sessions. Though she tried to stay optimistic, doubt lingered in the back of her mind. What if her email disappeared into a black hole of unread messages? What if no one took her seriously? Then, one afternoon, her phone buzzed. The caller ID displayed a number she didn't recognize. Hesitant but curious, she answered. "Hello, Miss Carter?" a deep voice asked. "This is Michael Grant from Quantum Tech Industries." Emily's heart skipped a beat. "Yes, Mr. Grant, how can I help you?" "I received your proposal," he continued, his tone measured but interested. "Your insights caught my attention. I'd like to discuss them further. Are you available for a meeting tomorrow morning?" For a moment, Emily couldn't speak. When she finally found her voice, she managed a shaky, "Of course." After arranging the details, she hung up, her mind racing. Could this really be happening? Had her gamble actually paid off? That evening, she told her father about the call. John listened quietly, his eyes shining with pride. "I told you, Emily. Never underestimate yourself. You've got this." Despite his encouragement, Emily spent hours preparing for the meeting. She reviewed her notes, rehearsed possible questions, and double-checked every detail of her proposal. By the time morning arrived, she felt ready, or as ready as she could be. Walking into Quantum Tech again felt surreal. This time, however, she wasn't heading to a generic conference room. Instead, she was escorted to a private office on the top floor where Michael Grant awaited her. He greeted her warmly, offering a handshake and a seat. Though his demeanor was professional, there was a hint of curiosity in his eyes. "Miss Carter," he began, leaning back in his chair, "your proposal intrigued me. Tell me more about your approach. Taking a deep breath, Emily launched into her explanation. She spoke confidently, laying out her theory about the AI's inflexibility and proposing a solution based on adaptability. As she talked, she noticed Michael nodding thoughtfully, occasionally jotting down notes. When she finished, he sat silently for a moment, considering her words. "This is bold," he said finally, a slight smile playing on his lips. "And risky. But sometimes, bold ideas are exactly what we need. Let's see if your theory holds up in practice." With that, he agreed to let Emily test her solution under supervision. Though thrilled, she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Convincing others to trust her wouldn't come naturally, especially given her lack of experience. But for the first time in a long while, Emily felt truly hopeful. She had been given a chance, and she wasn't about to waste it. The next morning, Emily arrived at Quantum Tech Industries earlier than she had ever been before. Her stomach churned with a mix of excitement and nerves as she stepped off the elevator onto the R&D floor. It was nothing like the sleek lobby she'd seen during her interview. This area buzzed with activity, engineers huddled around desks cluttered with papers and laptops, while others typed furiously at rows of computers lining the walls. The air smelled faintly of coffee and electronics, and the low murmur of conversations blended with the rhythmic tapping of keyboards. Emily spotted Michael Grant standing near a glass-walled conference room, talking to a tall woman with sharp features and an air of authority. When he noticed Emily approaching, he waved her over. "Miss Carter," he said warmly, "this is Laura Bennett, one of our senior engineers. She'll be overseeing your work." Laura turned to face Emily, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her piercing gaze swept over Emily, lingering briefly on her simple blazer and worn bag. "So you're the one who thinks she can fix what dozens of experts haven't," she said bluntly, her tone dripping with skepticism. Emily swallowed hard, but held her ground. "I'm not claiming I have all the answers," she replied evenly, "but I believe my approach could help. I'm here to learn and contribute however I can." Laura raised an eyebrow but didn't respond immediately. Instead, she gestured for Emily to follow her into the main workspace. As they walked, Laura explained the situation in more detail. The malfunctioning AI system, nicknamed Atlas, was responsible for managing critical operations across several departments. Its intermittent failures had caused costly delays and jeopardized major client contracts. Engineers had spent weeks poring over its code, running diagnostics and tweaking algorithms, but nothing seemed to resolve the issue permanently. "You'll be working out of this station," Laura said, pointing to a corner desk equipped with 2 monitors and a keyboard. "We've given you access to a test version of Atlas so you can experiment without affecting the live system. Don't mess it up." Emily nodded, taking a seat and powering up the equipment. Despite Laura's cold demeanor, she felt a spark of determination ignite within her. This was her chance to prove herself, not just to Laura or Michael, but to everyone who doubted her abilities. Over the next few days, Emily dove headfirst into the project. She started by analyzing the existing codebase, line by line, looking for patterns that might explain the erratic behavior. At first, progress was slow. The sheer complexity of the system overwhelmed her, and there were moments when self-doubt crept in. But she reminded herself why she was here, to show that she belonged no matter what anyone else thought. Laura checked in on her regularly, often hovering silently behind her shoulder as Emily worked. At first, her presence felt intimidating, but Emily soon realized it was less about distrust and more about curiosity. Laura wanted to see how this inexperienced newcomer would tackle a problem that had stumped seasoned professionals. One afternoon, after hours of staring at lines of code, Emily stumbled upon something unusual, buried deep within the programming. Logic was a series of rigid constraints designed to optimize efficiency. These constraints forced Atlas to prioritize speed above all else, leaving little room for flexibility when faced with unexpected variables. It was exactly what Emily had suspected, a lack of adaptability. Excited by her discovery, she jotted down her findings and drafted a new algorithm designed to introduce a degree of unpredictability into Atlas's decision-making process. The T-ware idea was simple. Instead of relying solely on predefined rules, the AI would simulate human-like reasoning by weighing multiple options and choosing the most effective path based on context. When Emily presented her findings to Laura later that day, the older woman listened intently, her expression unreadable. "Interesting," Laura said finally, leaning back in her chair. "It's risky, though. Introducing too much variability could destabilize the entire system." "I understand the risks," Emily replied earnestly. "But I think it's worth testing. If we limit Atlas to rigid parameters, it'll never be able to handle real-world scenarios effectively. We need to teach it how to adapt." Laura studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "All right, let's run some simulations. If your theory holds up, we'll take it further." With Laura's approval, Emily began implementing her changes. Over the next week, she worked tirelessly, running countless tests and refining her algorithm. Each failure brought her closer to success, teaching her valuable lessons along the way. Slowly but surely, she began to earn Laura's respect. The older engineer stopped treating her with outright skepticism and started offering constructive feedback, even joining her for brainstorming sessions. Their collaboration marked a turning point in Emily's journey. Though other team members remained wary of her presence, Laura's growing support gave her confidence. One evening, as they reviewed the latest round of simulation results together, Laura broke the silence. "You know," she said casually, "when Michael first told me about you, I thought he was crazy. Bringing in someone with no experience, it sounded like a recipe for disaster." Emily smiled faintly. "I get it. I wouldn't trust me either if I were in your shoes." Laura chuckled. "Well, you've proven me wrong so far. Your ideas are unconventional, but they're working. Keep this up and you might actually solve the problem." Though her words were measured, Emily heard the underlying compliment loud and clear. For the first time since starting at Quantum Tech, she felt like she was being taken seriously, not as the janitor's daughter or an outsider, but as a capable contributor. As the days passed, tensions among the rest of the team grew. Some engineers resented Emily's involvement, believing she was getting special treatment because of Michael's interest in her proposal. Others admired her tenacity, but worried that giving her credit would undermine their own efforts. Whispers followed her wherever she went, and though Emily tried to ignore them, they weighed heavily on her mind. Richard Dawson, the hiring manager who had initially rejected her, became particularly vocal in his criticism. During a team meeting, he openly questioned whether Emily's contributions were truly necessary. "She's inexperienced," he argued. "Letting her experiment with such a critical system is irresponsible." Michael, however, stood firmly behind Emily. "Her perspective has already yielded promising results," he countered. "Sometimes fresh eyes are exactly what we need to break through old barriers." The argument left Emily feeling conflicted. On one hand, she appreciated Michael's support. On the other, she hated being the center of controversy. She knew proving herself wouldn't be easy, but she hadn't anticipated just how difficult it would be to navigate the politics of such a competitive environment. Despite the challenges, Emily refused to give up. Every setback only fueled her determination to succeed. With Laura's guidance and her own relentless drive, she continued pushing forward, inching closer to a solution that could change everything, for Quantum Tech and for herself. As the days turned into weeks, Emily's presence at Quantum Tech became both a source of inspiration and tension. Her unconventional approach to solving the AI issue had started showing promising results, but not everyone was happy about it. Some team members grumbled under their breath, accusing her of hogging the spotlight or riding on Michael Grant's favoritism. Others simply avoided her altogether, refusing to collaborate or even acknowledge her contributions. Despite the negativity, Emily pressed on, determined to prove that her ideas could make a difference. Laura Bennett, who had initially been skeptical of Emily, now stood firmly by her side. Over countless late nights spent debugging code and running simulations, the two had developed an unlikely partnership. Laura began to see beyond Emily's lack of experience, recognizing her raw talent and relentless drive. She often found herself defending Emily during heated discussions, silencing critics with sharp remarks like, "If you don't have anything constructive to add, maybe you should let those who do get back to work." Richard Dawson, however, remained a constant thorn in Emily's side. He couldn't stand the idea that someone he had dismissed so easily was now being praised by the CEO himself. During meetings, he made snide comments about how Emily's solutions were untested and risky, implying that she was jeopardizing the entire project. His words stung, but Emily refused to let him rattle her. Instead, she channeled her frustration into her work, pouring every ounce of energy into perfecting her algorithm. One particularly tense day, Richard confronted Emily directly. They were in the middle of testing a new version of Atlas when he stormed into the lab, his face red with anger. "This isn't working," he snapped, pointing at one of the monitors where an error message flashed repeatedly. "Your changes are making things worse, not better." Emily took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "It's still in the testing phase," she explained patiently. "We're identifying weak points and fixing them as we go. That's how development works." "Development?" Richard scoffed. "You're playing around with something you barely understand. You're going to cost us this client if you keep messing up." Before Emily could respond, Laura stepped in, her voice icy. "Enough, Richard. If you actually bothered to look at the data instead of complaining, you'd see that progress is being made. Back off and let her do her job." Richard glared at both women but said nothing more, retreating to his office in a huff. Though relieved, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that his hostility was only going to escalate. She knew she needed to deliver concrete results and fast if she wanted to silence her detractors once and for all. Late one night, after most of the team had gone home, Emily sat alone in the lab, staring at lines of code on her monitor. She sipped cold coffee from a paper cup, her mind racing as she worked through yet another round of adjustments. Just as she was about to call it a night, a breakthrough came. A small tweak to the algorithm suddenly resolved a persistent bug that had plagued the system for weeks. Her heart raced as she ran additional tests, each one confirming the fix. Excited, she sent a quick message to Laura, asking her to come back to the lab. Within minutes, Laura arrived, bleary-eyed but alert. "What's going on?" she asked, pulling up a chair next to Emily. "I think I've got it," Emily said, her voice trembling with excitement. She walked Laura through the changes, explaining how they addressed the root cause of the problem. Together, they ran more simulations, each one yielding positive results. By the time they finished, dawn was breaking outside the windows. "This is incredible," Laura murmured, leaning back in her chair. "You've done it, Emily. This could be the solution we've been looking for." The next morning, Emily presented her findings to the entire team. Michael Grant joined the meeting, eager to hear the latest update. As Emily explained her breakthrough, the room fell silent. Even Richard Dawson listened without interrupting, though his scowl deepened with each passing minute. When she finished, Michael clapped his hands together, breaking the silence. "Excellent work, Miss Carter. This is exactly the kind of innovation we need. Let's move forward with implementing these changes across the live system." The announcement sparked mixed reactions. Some team members congratulated Emily, finally warming up to her presence. Others muttered under their breath, clearly unhappy that an outsider had outperformed them. Richard, predictably, was livid. As the meeting ended, he cornered Michael in the hallway, his tone accusatory. "Are you really going to trust the future of this company to someone who has no real-world experience?" he demanded. "She's just a kid." Michael's response was calm but firm. "Experience isn't everything, Richard. Sometimes it's fresh perspectives that lead to the best solutions. Emily has earned her place here, and I won't tolerate anyone undermining her efforts." Though Richard backed down reluctantly, Emily knew he wouldn't give up so easily. Still, she felt a renewed sense of confidence. For the first time since starting at Quantum Tech, she truly believed she belonged. Over the following days, Emily and Laura worked closely to integrate the updated algorithm into the live system. It was a delicate process, requiring meticulous attention to detail. Every step of the way, Emily double-checked her work, ensuring there were no mistakes. The pressure was immense, but she thrived under it, fueled by the knowledge that failure wasn't an option. Finally, the day came to activate the new version of Atlas. The entire team gathered in the control room, watching anxiously as Emily initiated the launch sequence. For several agonizing minutes, nothing happened. Then, slowly but surely, the screens lit up with green indicators, signaling success. The system was functioning perfectly, responding to inputs with unprecedented adaptability. Cheers erupted throughout the room as the reality sank in. The crisis was over. Employees hugged each other, shaking hands and celebrating the end of weeks of stress and uncertainty. Emily stood quietly off to the side, overwhelmed by the magnitude of what she had accomplished. Laura approached her, a rare smile on her face. "You did it," Laura said simply, placing a hand on Emily's shoulder. "Against all odds, you solved the problem." Tears welled up in Emily's eyes as she nodded. "Thank you for believing in me," she whispered. "I couldn't have done it without your support." As the celebration continued, Michael pulled Emily aside for a private conversation. "Miss Carter," he began, his tone serious but kind, "you've exceeded my expectations. Not only did you solve our toughest challenge, but you also proved that brilliance knows no boundaries. I'd like to offer you a permanent position here at Quantum Tech as a lead researcher." Emily blinked, stunned by the offer. I don't know what to say," she stammered. "Take your time to think about it," Michael replied. "But know that this company would be lucky to have you." Later that evening, as Emily left the building, she felt a strange mix of pride and unease. Solving the AI problem had been a monumental achievement, but it had also opened her eyes to the challenges of working in such a competitive environment. She wondered whether staying at Quantum Tech was truly the right path for her, or if it was time to forge her own way forward. The days that followed Emily's success at Quantum Tech were a whirlwind of emotions. News of her breakthrough spread quickly, not just within the company but also beyond its walls. Reporters and tech blogs began picking up the story, fascinated by the unlikely rise of a young woman who had been rejected outright before proving herself indispensable. Headlines like "Janitor's Daughter Solves Tech Giant's Crisis" dominated social media feeds, turning Emily into an overnight sensation. At first, the attention was overwhelming. Strangers reached out to congratulate her, while others criticized her sudden fame. Some praised her ingenuity and perseverance, calling her a role model for underdogs everywhere. Others accused her of riding on luck or exploiting connections, ignoring the countless hours she had spent working tirelessly to solve the problem. Through it all, Emily struggled to stay grounded, leaning on her father and Laura for support. John Carter beamed with pride whenever he saw his daughter's name in the news. "You've always been capable of great things, Emily," he told her one evening over dinner. "Now the world knows it too." But despite the praise from her family and close friends, Emily couldn't ignore the growing unease inside her. The spotlight felt heavy, and the politics at Quantum Tech only added to her discomfort. Richard Dawson continued to resent her, making snide remarks whenever possible. Even some of her colleagues, who had initially warmed up to her, grew distant once they realized how much credit she was receiving. It wasn't jealousy exactly, it was more like fear. Fear that her success might overshadow their own contributions. Michael Grant tried to smooth things over, publicly acknowledging the entire team's efforts during press conferences and internal meetings. But no matter how many times he emphasized collaboration, the tension lingered. Emily knew she couldn't change how others felt about her, but she could control how she responded. Instead of letting negativity consume her, she focused on what truly mattered: the work itself. When Michael formally offered her a permanent position as a lead researcher, Emily took her time considering it. On paper, it was everything she had ever dreamed of, a high-profile role at one of the most prestigious companies in the industry. But deep down, she wondered if staying at Quantum Tech aligned with her long-term goals. The environment was competitive, often cutthroat, and she wasn't sure she wanted to spend years navigating office politics. One evening, after another long day at the office, Emily sat alone in her apartment, staring out the window at the city, lights below. Her mind raced with possibilities. What if she didn't accept Michael's offer? What if she used this moment to start something entirely new? Something that reflected her values and vision? The idea excited her. Over the past few weeks, she had discovered a passion for creating accessible technology, tools that could empower smaller businesses and communities rather than just serving corporate giants. Quantum tech was impressive, but its focus was narrow. There was so much untapped potential in bringing advanced AI systems to people who needed them most. With newfound clarity, Emily decided to decline Michael's offer. She drafted a polite email explaining her decision, expressing gratitude for the opportunity while sharing her desire to explore different avenues. When she sent it, she felt a weight lift off her shoulders. For the first time in months, she felt free. The next morning, Emily met with Michael to discuss her choice in person. He listened quietly, his expression unreadable. When she finished speaking, he nodded slowly. "I can't say I'm not disappointed," he admitted. "But I understand your reasons. You've already proven you're capable of achieving extraordinary things. If anyone can succeed on their own terms, it's you." His words meant a lot to Emily, easing any lingering guilt she felt about leaving. As she walked out of his office, she noticed Laura waiting for her in the hallway. "So you're really going through with it?" Laura asked, raising an eyebrow. "I am," Emily replied, smiling. "It's time for me to take the next step." To her surprise, Laura smiled back. "Good for you. And hey, if you need help getting started, let me know. I might be interested in joining you." Emily blinked, stunned. "Are you serious?" "Absolutely," Laura said. "Big corporations have their place, but there's something appealing about building something from scratch. Plus, I think we make a pretty good team." The offer caught Emily off guard, but in the best way possible. With Laura's expertise and guidance, she felt even more confident about pursuing her dream. Over the following weeks, they began laying the groundwork for their new venture, brainstorming ideas and sketching out plans late into the night. Meanwhile, the controversy surrounding Emily's departure continued to swirl. Richard Dawson seized the opportunity to criticize her decision, telling anyone who would listen that she lacked commitment and loyalty. Others defended her, pointing out that she had already done more for quantum tech than most employees could claim in a lifetime. The debate raged on, but Emily paid little attention. She was too busy focusing on the future. As she prepared to leave quantum tech for the last time, Emily reflected on how far she had come. Just months ago, she had walked into the building as an outsider, dismissed and underestimated. Now, she was walking out as someone who had defied expectations. Not just those of others, but her own as well. She wasn't just the janitor's daughter anymore. She was a problem solver, an innovator, and a trailblazer. Her final day at Quantum Tech was bittersweet. Colleagues stopped by her desk to wish her luck, some sincere, others less so. Laura helped her pack up her belongings, teasing her about how messy her workspace had become. "You'll need to keep things organized if you want your new company to succeed," she joked. "I'll try," Emily laughed, zipping up her bag. But no promises. Before heading home, Emily made one last stop, to thank her father. John had worked at Quantum Tech for years, cleaning floors and emptying trash bins without complaint. His quiet dedication had inspired her to aim higher, to believe she could achieve anything she set her mind to. As she hugged him goodbye, tears welled up in her eyes. "You've made me so proud, Emily," John said softly. "Never forget where you came from. But don't let it hold you back either." "I won't, Dad," she promised. "This is just the beginning." With that, Emily stepped out of the building for the final time, ready to embark on a new chapter. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but she was prepared to face whatever challenges came her way. After all, she had already proven that rejection wasn't the end, it was simply the start of something greater. Emily's first few months after leaving Quantum Tech were a whirlwind of activity. She and Laura threw themselves into building their new company, which they named Adaptive Tech Solutions. Their goal was simple yet ambitious: to create advanced AI systems that were affordable, adaptable, and accessible to smaller businesses and underserved communities. It wasn't just about making money. It was about leveling the playing field, giving everyone a chance to benefit from cutting-edge technology. At first, progress was slow. Starting a business from scratch required resources they didn't have: money, equipment, connections. But Emily refused to let setbacks discourage her. Every morning she woke up early, fueled by coffee and determination, ready to tackle whatever challenges lay ahead. By day, she worked on securing funding, reaching out to investors who might believe in their vision. By night, she collaborated with Laura to refine their prototype AI system, poring over lines of code and testing features until everything ran smoothly. John Carter watched his daughter's journey with quiet pride. Though he didn't fully understand the technical aspects of what she was doing, he admired her resilience and passion. Whenever she doubted herself or felt overwhelmed, he reminded her of how far she'd already come. "You've faced bigger challenges than this," he would say. "And look where you are now." One evening, Emily sat at the kitchen table with her laptop, showing John the latest version of their AI platform. She explained how it could analyze patterns in data to help small businesses optimize their operations or assist farmers in predicting crop yields based on weather trends. Her voice lit up with excitement as she described its potential applications. "This is incredible, Emily," John said, shaking his head in amazement. "I don't know much about computers, but I can see how important this is. You're going to change lives." His words brought tears to her eyes. For so long she had wanted to prove herself, not just to others, but to him. To show him that all his sacrifices, all those years of working tirelessly as a janitor to provide for their family, hadn't been in vain. Now, she realized, she didn't need to prove anything. He had always believed in her, even when no one else did. As weeks turned into months, Adaptive Tech Solutions began gaining traction. Emily and Laura secured seed funding from a group of investors impressed by their innovative approach and clear mission. With the financial backing they needed, they rented a small office space downtown, transforming it into a hub of creativity and collaboration. They hired a handful of employees, many of whom were young engineers eager to work on projects that made a real difference. The media continued to follow Emily's story, fascinated by her transition from quantum tech rebel to tech entrepreneur. Journalists wrote glowing profiles about her journey, highlighting not only her achievements but also her commitment to inclusivity and accessibility. Some critics dismissed her efforts as naive idealism, arguing that big companies would always dominate the industry. But Emily welcomed the skepticism. It only fueled her determination to prove them wrong. One of their earliest clients was a local nonprofit organization focused on environmental conservation. The group struggled to manage large amounts of data, collected from sensors monitoring air quality and deforestation rates. Traditional AI systems were too expensive and complex for them to use effectively. When Emily and Laura offered their solution, tailored specifically to meet the nonprofit's needs, the results were transformative. Within weeks, the organization reported significant improvements in efficiency and accuracy, allowing them to expand their impact. Word spread quickly, and soon other organizations began reaching out. Small businesses, schools, and community groups saw the value in Adaptive Tech Solutions' approach. Each success story reinforced Emily's belief that technology should be a tool for empowerment, not exclusion. Despite the growing recognition, Emily remained humble. She never forgot the lessons she had learned during her time at Quantum Tech, the importance of perseverance, teamwork, and staying true to oneself. She also understood the weight of responsibility that came with leadership. As CEO of her own company, she strived to create a workplace culture rooted in respect and collaboration, ensuring that everyone felt valued and heard. Laura played a crucial role in this effort. Her experience and steady demeanor balanced Emily's enthusiasm and idealism, creating a dynamic partnership that drove the company forward. Together, they tackled challenges head-on, celebrating victories along the way. Whether it was debugging code late into the night or brainstorming marketing strategies over takeout pizza, they approached every task with a shared sense of purpose. By the end of their first year, Adaptive Tech Solutions had established itself as a rising star in the tech world. Emily stood on stage at a conference accepting an award for innovation in artificial intelligence. As she looked out at the audience, she thought about how far she had come, from being rejected outright to standing here, recognized for her contributions. But more importantly, she thought about the people whose lives their work had touched. After the ceremony, Emily returned home to find John waiting for her. He greeted her with a hug, holding her tightly for a moment before stepping back to look at her. "You did it, Emily," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You showed the world what you're capable of." She smiled, feeling a lump form in her throat. "We did it, Dad. None of this would have been possible without you." They spent the rest of the evening reminiscing about the past, sharing stories and laughter. For Emily, it was a reminder of why she had started this journey in the first place, to honor her father's sacrifices and inspire others to dream big, no matter where they came from. The next morning, as Emily walked into the office, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. There was still so much work to be done, so many challenges to overcome. But she knew she wasn't alone. With Laura by her side, a dedicated team behind her, and her father's unwavering support, she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. Adaptive Tech Solutions wasn't just a company. It was proof that determination and hard work could break down barriers. And for Emily Carter, it was the beginning of a legacy she hoped would inspire generations to come.